It's become an annual rite of spring in Toronto. The Leafs answering questions about another first-round loss at their end-of-season media availability. The players, Sheldon Keefe, Kyle Dubas, and Brendan Shanahan, all took their turn at the podium today, and essentially the message was, we believe in this group, and we're going to run it back.
We'll now be making changes just simply for the sake of saying that we made changes. With that, I think that Kyle built a very good hockey team. I think he made excellent adjustments along the way. And I think Sheldon is an excellent coach. As we look forward to next year and getting to work toward next year, I think it's important to sort of state that I see both of them as being extremely important in getting us to the next level.
So, Arash, what was your reaction to what you heard today?
Well, I guess we can let the record show, Jesse, why today, why Tuesday, May 17th, will actually go down as a significant one for the hockey club in this city. Because today is the day the Toronto Maple Leafs have shown you that status quo for them is good enough. That a first-round exit over and over and over and over again will actually get you, Jesse, job stability. They're going to run it all back and keep the same band together again with Shanahan and Dubas and Keefe, the same trio that brought you the Columbus debacle and the Habs meltdown, and now the latest episode with the Lightning, and they are all coming back for more. They didn't even take a few days to sit on it and evaluate or have a sober second thought or even gauge the landscape of what's happening across the league. And we'll get to more on that in just a moment. It's as baffling as it is infuriating if you're a fan of this hockey club. And most bizarre of all was the tenor in which the Brain Trust spoke today. Little seemed amiss. Leafs management sat there with a straight face, speaking as if winning a round, getting through the first round, is the achievement. Think about how ridiculous that is. Think about the rhetoric out of their building today, that we're close, we're closer than we've ever been before. We didn't trail by as many goals this spring as we had in previous playoffs, and so that's progress.
One of the things that I liked about this year's process, despite the result, was that our team was on its toes.
Their toes. Shanahan said he was encouraged by that. That in this year's elimination loss, they were on their toes, not to be confused with the 67,000 previous elimination games, give or take, where they were on their heels. So they're going to run it back and keep the same band together again. A coach who had never worked in the NHL before Toronto, a GM who had never worked in the NHL before Toronto, a president who had never been a team executive in the NHL before Toronto, and together combined in their roles, 0 playoff series wins. You knew that already, but maybe you didn't know about their heels and their toes. There's just so many layers of what makes this thing all so absurd. And for one, it's how they contradict themselves. Both Shanahan and Dubas, ad nauseum, spoke of the desire to get better. Hell-bent on getting better. Once we get better, you'll see. Well, Barry Trotz is available. Pete DeBoer is available. 14 times those two coaches have gotten through the first round, which is apparently the benchmark now. They've been to the Stanley Cup final, Pete DeBoer twice. Trotz has actually lifted that silver beauty all of 4 years ago. So naturally, to get better, you'd entertain the thought of speaking with one or both of them, right?
I only think Sheldon's going to continue to get better, and I think when we speak of Sheldon in 10, 15 years from now, it'll be in the same way that you just spoke of those two great coaches. And, I think that'll be played out here in Toronto.
Dubas said he hadn't even thought about reaching out to DeBoer or Trotz. Because 10 or 15 years from now, it's the next Scotty Bowman. Dubas defends his guy from the Sioux. And so the GM stays and the coach stays, but surely something must change with the core. Dubas had been adamant on being top-heavy with his salary cap, giving Matthews and Marner and Tavares and Nylander the bag, re-up Morgan Rielly for 8 years and $60 million last October. Okay, Then comes Game 4. The opportunity to take a 3-1 stranglehold on the series. You want the defining moment of the Raptors' playoff championship run? It was Game 4 in Philly, round 2. Kawhi took over at the end, tied that thing up at 2 apiece, did it single-handedly. Game 4 in Tampa. This was the Leafs' chance. And Matthews, Marner, and Riley were a combined -10 in a 7-3 beatdown. But yes, please, tell me more about toes and heels and how this is different. Different against a Tampa team missing a top forward for much of Game 7, not to mention Kucherov clearly not being right. And around $48 million of the Leafs' cap space is devoted to their top 5. Dubas had once said he'd risk his career on this working. Any thoughts now, Kyle, on, maybe changing up your roster construction?
I don't know that I've ever felt that it's best to detract some of your very best players to spread the dollars around players who aren't as good.
They're going to do the same thing again. They're going to run it all back. Keep the same band together again. All in. Head, shoulders, knees, heels, toes. Status quo, Jesse. It's good enough for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's good enough for all of you. If you didn't believe it before today, management just showed you that's entirely the case.
Well done. Bringing the heat today. Okay, let me play devil's advocate for just 1 second here.
Can't wait.
Before we get to, I guess, where they do go from here, what you think needs to change. I think most Leaf fans would agree that this is probably the most talented and best team that we've seen, many of us, in our lifetimes, because you look at a franchise record, 115 points during the regular season. You look at what Sheldon Keefe has been able to accomplish, the win percentage in every year they have had more wins. This was his first 82-game season. They now have a significant amount of the roster that they're going to have to change. Now, I'm not talking about the core, but they have to fill in along the edges again. And the core that you spoke about led the team during the playoffs. So I know they didn't win.
Until it mattered.
Until Game 7, I guess.
Game 4.
Game 4 was, which we talked about yesterday, was a complete no-show. So the question then becomes what...
So when it mattered.
Yes.
Right.
Where do they go from here in terms of, you mentioned the core, Keefe and Dubas. What would you like to see happen when they all seemingly up until the first round of the playoffs, which is obviously the most important, they performed admirably up until Game 7?
This is a market, and I know it's a while ago now.
Yeah.
But Maple Leaf fans used to mock the Ottawa Senators for putting up President's Trophy banners in their arena. Mm-hmm. And now the justification is the regular season win totals matter. So which way are we going to have it? Mm-hmm. What is the point here? The point is to win a Stanley Cup. The point is to get not just beyond the first round, well past the first round. I think what was most disturbing, and I'm no Leaf fan, what was most disturbing today to me of the delusion that's going on is that the way Shanahan and Dubas spoke was about the Pistons knocking on the door before they got past the Celtics, mm-hmm. was of the Bulls knocking on the door before they got past the Bad Boys, was the walk before you run until you lift a championship. These dudes haven't gotten out of the first round, and it keeps coming back to that. And so something has to give. I mean, it's literally has to be one of three things. It's either at the management level, at the coach level, or at the roster construction level. And from what we saw today, that's a management group that does not want to change any of it and say, well, next time it's going to be better. Why? Why?
Yeah.
And Jesse, and who knows about any of this, but I also found it a little ridiculous, mm-hmm. not disingenuous, a little ridiculous, for Shanahan and Dubas to be up there talking about making Matthews a Maple Leaf for life. Austin Matthews is probably the most gifted player this franchise has ever had.
Yep.
He's top 2, top 3 player in the NHL without debate. How much longer does he want to stick around the sport? I mean, Marner, what do you say afterwards? I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired?
I mean, it's the same old story every year. What can they say? What can they really say?
Well, here's what Matthews can say. I'm not signing the next one.
Yeah.
Now, we don't know what matters to Austin Matthews. Is it geography? Is it winning? Is it money? Is it endorsements? Is it wanting to be in a specific market for a specific reason? We don't know. But Austin Matthews is under contract for 2 more years. What is the Maple Leafs pitch to Austin Matthews if winning is really important to him?
Well, he plays a huge role in that, right? Like, he's their best player, and he's doing what he can. And I would think that in the roster construction, they're probably talking to him about that because he is the most important player that they have. Ultimately, they have a lot of work to do, regardless of whether they're going to move out a significant piece or not. There's a lot to do. It is a fascinating conversation, and one that I'm sure we will continue to touch on throughout the offseason. But they're golfing now. That's the reality.